Annie clinked her champagne glass against Richard's, laughing a little too loudly, pretending I didn't even exist. I stood across the grand hall, still holding the small gift I had brought for her. It wasn't expensive, just something meaningful, something she would have loved when she actually cared. But tonight, she acted like she had never even met me. The room buzzed with music, rich scents, and polite conversation, but all of it felt muted in my ears. All I could see was Annie, basking in the attention of everyone else, while my presence barely registered. I had worn the outfit she once said made me look irresistible, hoping maybe, just maybe, she would still notice. Instead, she laughed at something Richard said and laid her hand on his arm like I wasn't standing just feet away. I watched her accept flowers from a guy in a designer suit, smiling like the perfect host. She didn't even glance at me once. Every second burned a deeper hole in my chest. I clenched the small box tighter in my hand. It felt heavy now, not because of the weight, but because of the way Annie had turned me into nothing more than a background character at her own party. A few people around me glanced awkwardly in my direction, sensing the humiliation radiating off me. I forced a tight smile, pretending it didn't hurt, pretending it didn't matter. But inside, something sharp and cold started taking root. If she wanted to pretend I didn't exist, then fine. I would make sure she noticed me, but not in the way she expected. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught sight of Delois standing alone by the garden entrance. She looked stunning, even more so because she wasn't trying too hard to impress anyone. For a split second, our eyes met, and I saw it. The flicker of understanding, the silent question. I pocketed the gift box without another thought. Tonight, if Annie wanted a show, I was going to give her one she would never forget. I used to think Annie was different. When we first met at a campus event 2 years ago, she wasn't the girl draped in gold and surrounded by admirers. She was warm, genuine, quick to laugh at stupid jokes, even quicker to offer a hand if you needed help carrying something. Back then, I wasn't much either, just a broke engineering student juggling 3 part-time jobs. But Annie had this way of making me feel like I was someone, even when I wasn't sure myself. We started dating quietly, sneaking away from the noise of college life to spend lazy afternoons by the river or share greasy takeout under the stars. She told me once, "I don't care about money, Raymond. I just want someone who's real." I believed her. I believed her so much that every time I saved a little from my paycheck, I spent it on small surprises for her. Flowers, a book she mentioned in passing, a piece of jewelry she once admired at a market stand but said was too much. Somewhere, along the way, the girl who loved those simple things started to change. Maybe it was when her internship at her uncle's firm exposed her to luxury cars and champagne galas. Maybe it was when Richard entered the picture, all tailored suits and trust funds, flashing his connections like badges of honor. I can't pinpoint the exact moment Annie started slipping away from me, but by the time I realized it, the distance between us felt too wide to cross. Still, I tried. God, I tried. I stayed up late helping her polish her presentations even when I had my own deadlines looming. I listened to her vent about petty office politics. I stood by her side at her events, wearing borrowed jackets and forcing polite smiles just to be part of her world. And tonight was supposed to be the night I showed her that no matter how far she climbed, I would still be there, willing to catch her if she fell. That was before I saw her with Richard. The way she leaned into him, laughed at his lame jokes, let him pour her another drink while brushing him off like it was nothing. I wasn't even jealous anymore. Jealousy implies you think you still have a claim on something. I knew I didn't. Not anymore. I was just sad. Sad for the version of me that once thought love was enough. Sad for the version of her that once believed it too. Deloy had always been the quiet one in Annie's circle, her best friend from high school, the one who never fought for the spotlight. She was the kind of person who said little but noticed everything. During all those times I stood awkwardly at Annie's events, Deloy was the one who would crack a small joke to ease my nerves or hand me a drink when Annie forgot I existed, and now here she was again, standing by the garden doors, sipping something clear and sparkling, watching the whole scene unfold with quiet eyes. I moved through the crowd like a ghost, nobody really paying attention. Annie's voice floated through the air, high and sweet, as she gushed over some new venture she and Richard were planning. Something inside me shifted. Not anger, not spite. Something deeper. A cold kind of resolve. When I reached Delois, she looked up at me without surprise, as if she had been expecting me all along. "You look like you're about to do something reckless," she said softly. "Maybe I am," I said. She tilted her head, studying me for a beat longer than necessary. Then she smiled. Not the kind of smile you give out of politeness, but something sadder, something that said she understood more than she let on. "I'm in," she said simply, setting her drink down. I didn't know what exactly I was asking, and she didn't ask either. It didn't matter. All that mattered was that tonight I wasn't going to stand in the corner like a fool, watching Annie shine brighter without me. I offered Delois my arm, and without hesitation, she slid hers through mine. The buzz in the room shifted the moment we stepped forward together. Heads turned, whispers started. After all, Delois wasn't the type to make a scene. She was the quiet, untouchable one, and now she was clinging to me, her laugh light against my shoulder, as if I was the most charming man in the room. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Annie's hand freeze halfway to her mouth, champagne flute hovering in the air. Her smile faltered, just for a fraction of a second, but I caught it. I felt it. Good. Delois squeezed my arm gently, grounding me. I leaned down, close enough for only her to hear. "Thank you," I whispered. "For what?" she murmured back. "For letting me breathe again," I said. She smiled again, a little softer this time, and together we stepped further into the crowd, into the light Annie thought she had stolen from me forever. We hadn't even made it halfway across the hall before. Annie was moving toward us. She abandoned Richard mid-sentence, cutting through the sea of faces like a woman on a mission. Her heels clicked sharply against the marble floor, her posture perfect, her expression carefully composed. But I could see it. The tightness around her eyes. The stiffness in her smile. She stopped a few feet in front of us, blocking our path as if she had every right to. "Raymond," she said lightly, her gaze flicking to Delois, then back to me. "I didn't know you were coming." She lied so smoothly it almost sounded believable. I gave a polite nod, feeling Delois's hand tighten just slightly on my arm. "You didn't invite me," I said, my voice even. "But it's a public event, isn't it?" Annie's smile faltered for the briefest second before she recovered. "Of course. The more the merrier." Her eyes darted to where Delois's hand rested casually against my sleeve. I could almost hear the questions forming in her mind. Why Delois? Why now? Richard caught up then, standing a little too close behind Annie, his presence like an afterthought she couldn't fully ignore. He gave me a mocking smile, one that said he knew exactly what was going on and found it amusing. "Enjoying the party?" he asked, voice dripping with fake friendliness. I returned his smile without warmth. "I am now." Delois let out a soft laugh, sweet and dangerous, and Annie's fingers curled slightly at her sides. "You didn't say you were bringing a date," Annie said, her tone just a little too sharp now. "I didn't realize I needed your permission," I replied smoothly. For a moment, none of us said anything. The music and chatter around us carried on, oblivious, but inside this small bubble, the air was electric, heavy with things unspoken. Annie drew in a shallow breath, her eyes narrowing just slightly. "I just hope you're not trying to make a scene," she said, voice dropping low so only we could hear. "This is an important night for me." I leaned in slightly, my smile never wavering. "Wouldn't dream of it." Delois shifted closer, playing her part perfectly, and Annie's nostrils flared almost imperceptibly. I saw the moment she realized she was losing control, that the careful image she had curated was cracking at the edges. "Have fun," Annie said finally, each word clipped and forced. Then she turned sharply and stalked away, Richard scrambling after her like a loyal dog. Deloy let out a breath and looked up at me. That went well. I couldn't help it. I laughed. A real rough laugh that felt like breaking free after months of suffocating. You were amazing, I said. She shrugged lightly, her smile teasing. She's not used to losing, especially not to someone she thought she could ignore. The rest of the night blurred into a haze of lights, music, and empty conversations. I stayed by Deloy's side, pretending everything was fine, while Annie orbited closer and closer, each new drink loosening her tongue and sharpening her glare. Near midnight, she finally cornered me by the buffet table, her face flushed with anger barely masked by her makeup. "Was this your plan?" she hissed. "Parade around with my best friend to humiliate me?" I set my plate down calmly. "Funny. I thought you humiliated me first." Annie scoffed. "Don't be dramatic. It's just a party. You're not the center of the universe, Raymond." "No," I agreed. "Tonight, I'm just someone you didn't think mattered. Until I stopped standing in the corner." Her eyes flashed, and for a moment, the Annie I used to know, the one who loved cheesy jokes and greasy burgers, flickered through. But it was gone as quickly as it came, replaced by this version, polished, cold, defensive. "You're being petty," she said. I tilted my head. "Am I? Or are you just mad that someone else is finally shining?" She opened her mouth to respond, but couldn't seem to find the words. Deloy appeared at my side then, offering me a glass of water like it was the most natural thing in the world. I accepted it with a quiet thank you, our hands brushing. Annie's gaze zeroed in on that touch like a laser. "You think she's any better?" she spat, her voice trembling now. "You think Deloy isn't just using you too?" Deloy stiffened but said nothing. She didn't have to. I stepped forward, my voice low but steady. "Maybe she is. Maybe she's not, but at least she doesn't pretend I'm invisible when it's convenient." Annie recoiled as if I'd slapped her. For a long moment, she just stared at me, her expression crumbling, piece by piece. "I never meant to hurt you," she said finally, so softly I barely heard it over the thump of the bass. "Yeah," I said, "but you did." And some part of her must have known there was no fixing it anymore, because she didn't chase after me when I turned away, didn't call my name, didn't beg for a second chance. She just stood there, clutching an empty champagne flute like it could somehow fill the hollow space between us. Deloa fell into step beside me without a word, her presence solid and calm. And for the first time that night, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel overlooked. I felt like I was finally choosing myself. I should have felt victorious. Standing there with Deloa beside me, the crowd parting without us even trying, the stolen glances, the low whispers. Everything said I had won something tonight. And yet deep down, it didn't feel like winning. It felt hollow, heavy, twisted. I caught a glimpse of Annie again across the hall. She wasn't laughing anymore. She wasn't even talking. She just stood frozen, her posture stiff, her fingers twisting the stem of her empty glass. She looked so small suddenly, so far from the girl who used to curl up beside me on chilly nights, whispering plans for a future that never really existed. The ache in my chest was stubborn, refusing to leave. No matter how tightly I tried to lock it away, I hated that I still cared. I hated that after everything, part of me still wanted to go to her, to ask if she was okay, to fix things that were never mine to fix. Deloy must have sensed the storm swirling in my head because she leaned in slightly and whispered, "You don't owe her anything anymore." Her voice was soft but certain, cutting through the noise like a tether pulling me back to myself. I nodded mutely, swallowing down the lump in my throat. Every step I took away from Annie felt like dragging 1,000 invisible threads that still clung to my skin. The memories we built weren't easy to abandon, no matter how much the present demanded it. The rest of the night passed in flashes, Deloy steering me toward the dessert table with a teasing smile, classmates pulling me into light conversations that felt like background noise, music pulsing against the walls while my mind wandered back again and again to the look in Annie's eyes. Not anger. Not hatred. Just loss. When the party finally ended and people started leaving in twos and threes, I found myself standing outside the hall, staring at the night sky, cold air biting at my skin. I shoved my hands into my pockets, feeling strangely untethered. "You did the right thing," Deloy said from behind me. I turned slowly. She was watching me with that same quiet patience she always had, the kind that didn't demand answers but offered space for them if I wanted to give them. "Then why does it feel so awful?" I asked, my voice cracking slightly. "Because you're not the kind of person who stops caring overnight," she said, "and that's not a bad thing." I looked away, my jaw tightening. I didn't want to be the guy who still ached for someone who treated him like an accessory. I wanted to be stronger than that. I wanted to stop feeling like the villain for choosing myself. Suddenly, my phone buzzed. I pulled it out, heart sinking before I even saw the name. Annie. I stared at the screen, the message preview blaring at me in neon letters. "Can we talk? Please." Didn't move. I didn't open it. I just stood there, feeling the war rage inside me all over again. One part of me whispered, maybe she's realized her mistake. Maybe she's sorry. The other part, the quieter, stronger part, whispered back, and maybe you deserve better than apologies soaked in regret instead of change. I could feel Deloy watching me, waiting without pushing. I locked my phone without replying. Deloy smiled faintly, almost sadly, and fell into step beside me as we walked toward the parking lot. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. The silence between us was comfortable, something Annie and I had never mastered. As we reached the edge of the lot, I glanced back one last time. Annie stood in the doorway under the glow of the chandelier lights, clutching her phone like it was a lifeline, her figure small against the vast emptiness around her. For a moment, our eyes met, and then I turned away. Not out of cruelty, not out of anger, but because I finally understood that some things, no matter how much you once loved them, are better left behind, and no amount of champagne, no glittering party, no desperate text could change that now. I thought that would be the end of it. I thought ignoring her message would be the final clean break, but I should have known better. Annie never liked losing, especially not when the whole world was watching. It was 2 days later when it happened. A campus-wide post, anonymously submitted to the student forum, blew up overnight. Someone claiming to have inside knowledge posted a long, emotional story about a boy who used a sweet, trusting girl to climb the social ladder, only to abandon her once he became popular. The post didn't name names, but it didn't have to. The hints were obvious. Details about Annie's party, a description that matched my outfit that night, mentions of suddenly clinging to someone else's best friend as a way to humiliate and discard a pure-hearted girl. By the time I woke up and checked my phone, the damage was done. Hundreds of comments, accusations, pity posts for Annie, disgust directed at me. My inbox was full of angry messages from people I barely knew, friends I hadn't spoken to in months suddenly weighing in like they knew the first thing about my life. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the screen, feeling the familiar tightness crawl up my spine. That old helplessness, that old guilt, clawed its way back before I could stop it. Deloy called me a few minutes later. "I saw it," she said without preamble. "Yeah," I rasped. "You're not going to respond, are you?" she asked carefully. I wanted to. God, I wanted to tear into the lies, to defend myself, to explain everything. But some part of me already knew. No matter what I said, no matter how much truth I threw into the fire, people had already decided what they wanted to believe. "No," I said. "I'm done chasing after people who already made up their minds." Deloy was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "I'm proud of you." Her words shouldn't have mattered so much, but they did. They settled the storm raging inside me just a little, but the real storm was only beginning. That afternoon, someone slipped a note into my dorm door. No name. No handwriting I recognized. Just a simple, cruel sentence. "Maybe you should leave before you embarrass yourself more." Makoto's smug face flashed through my mind. So did Richard's arrogant smirk. Maybe it was one of them. Maybe it was someone Annie had stirred up without even realizing how much damage she was causing. I crushed the note in my fist. I wasn't going to run. I wasn't going to crawl away like some defeated animal. I was going to finish what she started. If Annie wanted a war, I was ready to burn the battlefield down. The moment came faster than I expected. Our university was hosting its annual charity gala, a much bigger event than Annie's birthday party. Professors, donors, even local celebrities would attend. Annie was one of the key student organizers, of course. And this time, she would be standing on that stage under the brightest lights, soaking in admiration while the whole campus watched, or so she thought. I didn't say a word to anyone. I didn't argue online. I didn't defend myself. I let the rumors pile up until people believed they had seen the whole story. Let them laugh. Let them whisper. I wasn't fighting a losing battle in the shadows. I was waiting for my moment in the sun. The gala night arrived. Everyone dressed their best. Cameras flashed, laughter echoed, champagne flowed like water. I stood in the back of the grand auditorium, hands in my pockets, heart beating steady and calm. Annie was radiant on stage, her hair pinned up in loose waves, her dress shimmering like starlight. She smiled as the host introduced her, modestly accepting compliments, playing the part of the perfect golden girl. Richard sat proudly among the VIP seats, clapping loudly like a trained seal. The host invited Annie to say a few words about the importance of charity and community spirit. She stepped up to the microphone, the crowd falling silent in reverence. And that was when the first image appeared on the giant screen behind her. At first, it was hard to make out. A blurred photo of a text conversation. People squinted, confused. Annie turned slightly, her words faltering mid-sentence. Another image flashed up. Screenshots, chat logs, bank transfer records, conversations where Annie begged classmates for money, spun elaborate sob stories, promised to repay them soon, then ghosted them. Messages where she laughed about cutting the chives and joked about finding more suckers to milk dry. The whispers started almost immediately. The auditorium, once buzzing with admiration, turned into a hive of confusion and disbelief. Annie's face paled under the stage lights. She stumbled over her words, tried to keep speaking, but no one was listening anymore. A new video played. It showed Annie at the police station, standing stiff and furious while officers reprimanded her for stealing my phone. Her voice was clear. In the recording, "I didn't take anything," followed immediately by her previous admission. "Yeah, I took it. Talking sense into him doesn't work." The video cut to screenshots of the campus group chat where she spread rumors about me being in debt, pretending to be rich, and even accusing me and David of being secretly together. By now, the crowd was in an uproar. Murmured accusations flew. Some people gasped. A few stood up, pulling out their phones to film the disaster unfolding. Annie turned in slow horror, staring at the wreckage flashing behind her. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. I walked forward from the back of the hall, each step measured, deliberate, cutting through the whispers like a blade. I didn't need a microphone. I didn't need to shout. When Annie's eyes locked onto mine, full of silent, desperate pleading, I only shook my head once, slowly. I didn't owe her anything anymore. The university dean, furious and pale, rose from his seat and whispered urgently with the event staff. In minutes, Annie was escorted off stage, her carefully constructed world collapsing around her as people parted like she carried a disease. Richard stood frozen, humiliated by association. Annie tried to walk tall as she left, but everyone could see the tremble in her knees. I didn't follow. I didn't even look away. David caught up with me as I exited the hall into the cold night air. He didn't say anything at first, just stood there with me, breathing in the sharp winter air. "You sure burned the whole thing down?" he finally said, half amazed, half unsettled. I shrugged slightly. "She lit the match herself. I just showed everyone the fire." David was quiet for a long moment. "You're not angry anymore," he said. And he was right. I wasn't. There was nothing left to be angry about, just a hollow space where something used to be, and peace filling in the gaps. The campus buzzed for days after that night. Whispers about Annie's scams, discussions about how easy it was for a beautiful girl to manipulate sympathy. Richard tried to distance himself publicly, but no one bought it. His family quietly pulled back their donations to the school, and soon he was just another disgraced name whispered about in corridors. Makoto, who had disappeared for weeks, slunk back to campus looking thinner, smaller. He didn't dare meet my eyes when we passed each other. He didn't need to. I wasn't interested in revenge anymore. I had everything I needed. One afternoon, as I sat under the old oak tree by the library, Deloy dropped down beside me without a word. She handed me a bottle of water, the sun catching the quiet humor in her eyes. "You're a terrifying man when you want to be," she said, smiling. I chuckled low under my breath. "Not terrifying," I said, "just patient." We sat there in easy silence, the wind stirring the leaves around us. "You know," she said after a while, "you never once asked me why I agreed to help you that night." I turned my head to look at her. She smiled a little, shy and sad all at once. "Because I've been invisible too," she said. "I know what it's like, to love someone who only sees you when it's convenient." I reached out without thinking and took her hand. Warm, real, steady. "Not anymore," I said. Deloy squeezed my fingers lightly. For the first time in a long time, the future didn't feel like a punishment. It felt wide open, like the first clear breath after a storm. And this time, I wasn't walking into it alone. The weeks that followed were strangely quiet. Not the suffocating kind of silence I used to feel when Annie would forget I existed, but a clean, open quiet, the kind that made breathing easy again. Annie officially withdrew from all her student positions. Rumors said she was facing university disciplinary action too, though nothing was ever publicly confirmed. Whatever future she had carefully built, whatever image she had polished to a perfect gleam, it shattered that night under the weight of her own lies. The people who had once flocked to her side vanished like smoke. No more sycophants, no more admirers. Just a lonely figure walking quickly through campus hallways, head bowed, avoiding every eye that once looked at her with admiration. As for Richard, he transferred to another school 2 towns away. Rumor had it his family pulled him out after the scandal started affecting their reputation. I couldn't bring myself to care enough to verify the details. Makoto faded into the background. He stopped hanging around the dorms, stopped inserting himself into conversations, stopped pretending he was part of anything. Sometimes I caught glimpses of him in the cafeteria, sitting alone, hunched over a cold tray of food. But I never said a word to him. I didn't need to. His own choices had already delivered the punishment better than anything I could have planned. And me? I lived. I studied. I worked out. I spent more time with David, who had proven himself a better friend than I had ever realized. I found new circles of people who liked me not because they thought I had money, not because I hovered in the orbit of someone popular, but because of who I was when no one else was looking. And slowly, Deloy became a part of that life too. She wasn't loud. She wasn't flashy. She didn't try to make grand gestures or force anything. She was just there, in the simple text messages wishing me luck on exams, in the extra cup of coffee she would bring without asking, in the quiet way she listened when no one else cared to. One chilly Saturday afternoon, months after the gala, we sat at a small cafe near campus, nursing cups of hot chocolate while students hurried past outside bundled against the wind. I watched her stir her drink absent-mindedly, a tiny smile playing at her lips as she recounted some ridiculous story about her disastrous high school prom. I found myself smiling too, not because I was forcing it, but because it felt natural. Easy. Real. When she finished the story, she looked up at me, catching me staring. "What?" she asked, laughing softly. I shook my head. "Nothing," I said. "Just thanks." For what? For staying real, when everything else turned fake. Dolores' smile softened. She reached across the table, brushing, her fingers lightly over mine. Not everything has to be complicated, Raymond, she said. Some people stay because they want to. No games, no trophies, no keeping score. I closed my hand over hers, feeling something solid settle in my chest. A foundation, not fireworks, not storms. Something I could actually build a future on. Later that night, as I walked back to my dorm, a figure stepped out from behind a vending machine blocking my path. Annie. She looked thinner, more fragile. Her hair, once so perfectly styled, hung limply around her shoulders. Her eyes, once full of sparkling ambition, were dull and restless now. I stopped a few feet away, giving her space. She opened her mouth but faltered. No accusations, no self-righteous anger, just a question. Was it you? She whispered. I knew what she meant. The posts, the screenshots, the video. I didn't lie. Yes, I said simply. She nodded slowly, as if she had expected it but still needed to hear it aloud. Her hands twisted nervously in the sleeves of her jacket. I lost everything, she said, voice trembling. I studied her for a long moment. Once, those words would have broken me. Once, I would have rushed to comfort her, to fix what wasn't mine to fix, but not now. You didn't lose it, I said. You threw it away. Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't move. Raymond, she choked out. I'm sorry. I believed her. But I also knew it didn't change anything. Take care of yourself, Annie, I said quietly. And then I stepped around her, leaving her standing alone under the flickering streetlight, clutching nothing but regret. I didn't look back. Back at the dorm, David looked up from his desk when I entered. He opened his mouth, probably to ask something, but I just shook my head and tossed my jacket onto my chair. It was over. The next morning, another campus-wide post appeared. This time, it wasn't about me. It was about Annie, a carefully written warning from a group of former classmates she had borrowed money from. It detailed every scheme she had pulled, every lie she had told. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't slander. It was just the truth, laid bare for everyone to see, impossible to ignore or twist. Annie didn't last a week after that. She officially withdrew from the university, disappearing from our lives like she had never existed. No fanfare, no goodbye party. Just a silence far louder than any scandal. As for me, I kept living. I graduated. I built the life I wanted. And when I looked back at those dark months, I didn't see a victim anymore. I saw a survivor, someone who had been used, discarded, humiliated, and who had chosen, piece by piece, not to stay broken. I had burned down the lies that tried to cage me. And from the ashes, I built something better, something real. Deloa was there through it all, not to complete me, not to fix me, but to walk beside me as an equal. One quiet night, as we sat together watching the stars from the rooftop, she leaned her head against my shoulder and whispered, "You ever regret it?" I thought about Annie's smile the first time we met. I thought about the cold glint in her eyes when she pretended I didn't exist. I thought about the fire I had walked through to reach this peace. No, I said, not even once. And under the vast, endless sky, for the first time in a long time, I meant it.